Hi there, I'm Air, and I use he, him.
And this is Haley, and I use she, her.
Hi, my name's Leap, and I use he, him.
And I'm Embers, he, him, and your DM. And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeons of your bad decisions and retrieve the treasures of wisdom.
We control the horizontal. We control the vertical. Anyway, welcome, Lee, back to the podcast. How you doing, sir?
Man, it is good. It is great. It is so nice to be here. Hello, podcast. What do you guys call your listeners? Insiders?
Checkers,
usually. That's how I refer to them when I'm posting on the Twitter page anyway. I think Jerica made that a thing. Sometimes she uses the black and red circle emojis too for the full checker experience.
Creative soul, that Jerica.
I like it.
Amazing.
So that's what I think. I like to use the green checkbox.
Oh, yeah.
Catchy with a capital E.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
So
But
we're here
that's
to check
also because I
ourselves
like
before
lists.
we wreck ourselves.
Wreck ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm definitely in the
Cart
wreck
horse.
myself category right now.
yeah.
Please check my
But if you're gonna
me.
check yourself, what they always say on those house flipping shows is you start in the basement, you start in the foundation, and with us that means we start with a dungeon crawl.
Well, in irrelevant sort of. I now have a basement that looks kind of like a dungeon.
TMI?
Would you like to see my dungeon?
Would I like to say that? I mean,
Oh,
I don't know if
You know
I
what
can.
I mean, guys, right?
You know what I mean. It's made of
Sometimes-
rocks.
Sometimes
and
it's
Made of rocks.
It's made of rocks. I now own a house that was built in 1880, which was a long time ago.
it's like,
Welcome, time travelers. 1880 was a long time ago.
This is the first time traveling Insight Check episode we've done.
Yeah, it's amazing. Actually, to be fair, everyone is time traveling.
Yes,
it's
I work
true.
not very far from where Haley's talking about. I work in a 1860s textile mill where they made patches and uniforms for Civil War soldiers, I guess. And it had a water wheel and it had a basement dungeon. And while the water wheel is gone,
oh my God.
let me tell you,
The basement dungeon still exists.
I work one step away from a zombie infestation.
Oh my God. That place is like at least
great.
20 ghosts deep. It has to be.
Okay, New
yeah, they're
England
we're
New
lousy
England
with
is
ghosts.
real cool.
Yeah.
New England is just full of
Ghosts.
ghosts. Ghosts. Just all ghosts.
Yep.
Just goes. It's
All
great.
the way down.
That I think
I'm
is
a
the
ghost,
state.
did you know?
Yeah, oh my. There you go. That's the state motto. New England, just ghosts.
Just go. Embers, could you please stop being the most relentlessly interesting person I know?
Speaking of Embers, what is your dungeon crawl this time around?
All right, so my dungeon crawl, this is very self-serving, but after we, and we, by which I mean a group of about 10 people who like the D&D Stream Acquisitions Incorporated, the C team, we kind of made an album for them, and it was mostly of, well, no, it was entirely of original material, and most of that was incredibly dorky rap material done by some of the people on this very podcast. But we took the time to make a Twitter account, and we've started working on album number 2.
Can't wait. That was the extent of my singing ability, so please don't. I can't contribute.
Singing ability is
Enjoy.
not a gating factor
You're-
in anything that we do.
Rapping ability wasn't a
In
gating
making
factor when we
music?
started either, so...
No.
Musical acumen of any sort is not required for entry.
Right.
No.
Unfortunately, the
entry.
requirements are really just a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Are
computer.
you on the internet? You're in the band. Leap, did you have a dungeon crawl?
Yeah,
today?
actually, thank you. I will go. So this is one of those weird time traveling events. By the time this hasn't happened yet. So in our timeline, this coming weekend is going to be the DCA Waffle Crew C Team Acquisition Incorporated mega game. So for our listeners, by the time you're hearing this, this would have just happened over the weekend. I am not going to be able to watch it over the weekend. So like you, good listeners, I will be able to watch it on video on demand. and YouTube from pretty much any channel that those two things are connected to. And so by the time you're listening to this, I'm sure that all of those things will be available to you. And like we've been hyping it up in a big way. They've been hyping it up in a big way. And like just talk about two really different, really interesting shows coming together. And I have absolutely no idea what it's going to look like. Although Jerry has said in this past episode that it is going to be brutal. So I feel like tears and death are on the way.
I think it's 5 games over 2 days with 8 players and 2 DMs, all culminating in a 2 DM 8-player game extravaganza on the Sunday.
Has that ever been attempted?
I don't know. I was actually pitching it to Jay after our Kenku episode where we did a co-DM'd scene where we each played an NPC and riffed off Jarikin Cupcake, and we were all having a lot of fun. I was like, Jay, we should really do this co-DMing. He's like, that would be really neat, and we could do this and that, but no. So I was kind of shot down. But I'm interested to see it play out.
Give it time. Good steaks got to marinate.
This is true.
Gotta get that flavor.
Yeah, that flavor. deep in the meat. So my dungeon crawl, our good friend Scarlet Moth has created a beautiful piece of work. As anyone knows, I'm a sucker for a cosplay sword. Our good friend Sakalo, Sam, had created a version of Amy T. Falcone's Walnut's sword for the C team, which has been prior mentioned. So on the DCA side, they started their campaign in Barovia, the Curse of Strahd campaign. And one of them, I believe, got a sun sword, which is an item from Curse of Strahd. So she has remade this as a prop, and it looks rad as hell. She's got a whole strip of LEDs up the blade, and it lights up, and it is very, very cool looking. And hats off to Moth, friend of the show. We've had her on before, and she just does amazing work, absolutely amazing work. So Moth, we see you, we love you.
It's even glowy.
I'm sure that as soon as this podcast comes out, it's already out there if you haven't already seen it. And like Air, I cannot stress enough how freaking cool and beautiful this thing looks.
I just want one, and so I can run around in my basement swinging it around, making firm sounds.
I am
That's
pretty
the dream.
excited for like the. She said she was going to take some more pictures of it, and I'm like, more pictures, more. It's great. I've also been watching her Mephalia.
I always say Mephalia.
Yeah, I'm not. I've always said
Sorry, I
Mephalia,
apologize.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is pronounced, but I've been watching the thread that she has pinned of her awesome progress there, and I've been really liking the beading that she's doing.
Oh yeah, totally.
I think that would be
Really
super
cool stuff there.
interesting to try. I've never done anything like that, and it looks very detailed but very awesome. So I can't wait to see how it all comes together. So I don't have a directly D&D news related dungeon crawl, but I've been really enjoying having some of our good artist friend Amy T. Falcone's streams on during the day, and I've been really enjoying watching her process and her drawing. It's been really inspiring me to work on my drawing, and I've gotten to see some really cool art of people's D&D characters come to life and hear like snippets of the stories people have come up with for their characters. Because she's been doing a little bit of commission work. She did one of my Fia, and I love it, and I've been really enjoying watching her stream during the day, so you should totally check it out. She's a new Twitch affiliate, and just been really enjoying having that on during the day. It helps with the background noise at my office for sure. Sometimes I get a little distracted, but I try to focus on my work, but keep the art going on the side there.
Wouldn't it be awesome if we ever got a chance to speak with her?
I know, she would just be great. I would be.
I mean, it would never happen. So now we're going to go into a session of RP. This entire episode, we wanted to focus on beginnings of D&D from a player's perspective, answering common new player questions, and maybe showing a common new player scenario that you're likely to run into in an early session, which our good friend Leap is going to DM us through this day.
Thank you. So I set this up as I'm a new DM, and so I wanted to find a way that anytime you come into a new area, you got to get quests and you got to find a way of dealing with that. So I tried to set up an interesting situation of how
Oh
players
yeah.
could end up getting quests without not always necessarily ending up at a tavern first off, or right at the quest hub, right? So let's say that you're entering a new major town by caravan in a province or kingdom none of you are from. The weeks that you have been on the road have been boring and uneventful journey, filled with boring and uneventful people, save for one, a merchant who you've all begun to befriend, and over time she has divulged to you that she was headed home to take on the family trade. Hushed and nervously, she told you about her uncle, who in his will and testament had named her head of the family business of creating and trading magical items for merchant guilds and the crown. Let's also say that over the weeks of keeping watch over fires and being cramped due to storms, she's also let on that her family name has been tarnished due to accusations of ties to the criminal underbelly that has arisen in this dark time. Her first task in the role is to bury her uncle and oversee his funeral. Worried about conflicts and not knowing who she could trust, she has worked diligently from afar to keep the date of the burial as well as the location a secret. She has also offered you a substantial reward if you could help her oversee the event and make sure it's finished quickly and without any controversy. On the day of your arrival, while you unpack at the gates, a servant of the Church of the Raven Queen, surrounded by city guard, rush to you and this woman. The date of the burial has been changed to today by the order of the magistrate. The merchant herself is also being called to the court to testify in an ongoing investigation into her uncle. Without much time to speak to the guards, she is whisked down the main road toward the court of the council, and the servant begins to show you to the small citadel. As you get close, weaving through the streets and alleys, before you see the very modest church, you see the lines upon lines of people waiting to enter the space where only a fraction of them will fit. The servant navigates the tightening laneways and brings you to the front, passing guards, family, and what seem like some questionable individuals trying to muscle their way to the head of the line. Inside, there are 5 rows of benches, simple candles lighting the stained glass windows, and a dark blue and black hanging of the Raven Queen herself. A priest motions you to the front in an unusual way. The casket is opened, and once you see the remains of the old half-elf merchant, the top is snapped closed. The priest looks at you expectantly, though he seems to be off balance. Shall we begin? And, which one of you is going to be speaking today?
I mean, I don't want to speak for the group, but I tend to be the most loquacious. So if you need someone to do the word speaking, I am a good word spokener.
Sure, that sounds great. And then as soon as you say that, Bert or Air, you see him open up a bottle and you see him kind of motion to the back, and he just kind of sits down at a chair. He motions to people at the front, and then the doors open, and pushing through this space, there begins to be a horde of people that just clearly won't fit into the space. So before we go into anything else, I would like you guys to tell me what you are going to do and what you're going to try and make this as seamless and quiet of a funeral as possible, and maybe some perception rolls as well.
Oh, I can do that. I am super perceptive. Haley, are you playing Thea or Posa? Because I could really use a cleric right about now.
I think I might play Thea.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to roll perception, and I get that's a 12 on the die, which means I have a 21.
Nice. Okay. Haley or Fia?
I don't know what my stats are. I'm being a good beginner player.
Yep. So how about this?
I also must get to a place where I can roll some things because my dice have been packed up and moved to my dungeon home. I just rolled a 2. So 2 for perception.
2 for perception.
I'm very busy getting the ceremonial herbs set up and lighting candles.
Awesome. And Embers, are you still able
So
to roll for us?
yes, so Oni, the lizard man druid, rolls a 10 perception.
Okay. So what you guys see is you see guard come in first, followed pretty closely by a group of rough looking individuals, kind of pushing themselves to the front and moving right up to the front of the church, right up to the front rows. Guard on one side and these individuals on the other. You can clearly tell, at least Bert, you can tell, and Sione, because or Embers, because you rolled a 10, I'll give this one to you as well. You can tell that they're looking for someone that doesn't seem to be there. The rest of the place is filling up fast, and there doesn't seem to be enough space for everyone here. So it looks like people are starting to get a little bit angry and disgruntled about trying to find seats.
I'm going to whip out my violin and start playing the chords to American Pie. And I'm subtly changing the words to reference the name of the dead merchant behind me. And I'm singing, like, to the guards, telling them, why don't you go and take a seat? There's too many people in here and I can't stand the heat. La 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 la. And I'm casting calm emotions as I do to just kind of chill out the whole crowd.
Awesome. That's incredible. So why don't you roll a performance check, and that will just help anything going on with the calm emotions as well.
I will do that. That is 17.
Oh, yeah. So all of a sudden, what was a ruckus and kind of upset looking group just starts swaying to the music and is very happily finding spots amongst the walls and along the back. And it gets to the point where some people actually just kind of set themselves back outside. Now, you do see that the people at the front, one man who is from the rough group of individuals kind of gets up and starts walking around, and he starts looking all over the place to see if he's missing something or somebody. And the guards seem to be having a pretty good eye on him. Near you,
Yes.
as you're playing, you hear a knocking sound, and you think that it might actually be coming from the casket.
I suddenly messaged to Fia, the dead man isn't fully dead. I mean, I'm a pretty good musician, but I don't think I can wake the dead yet. Could you come here and do some cleric stuff?
So I'm standing by the casket, preparing. I've been laying herbs around it and lighting some candles on it and beginning as soon as the kind of calm started to fall over, I started to prepare to begin the funeral rites. But as soon as the knocking kind of starts, I'll put my hand on the casket to see if I can feel any vibration.
Any vibrations?
Do I feel any either vibrations or get any feeling of undeadness or anything
Yeah,
bad?
as soon as you do that, you get a wash of unpleasantness, and you actually hear a small rapping, kind of like a little quick knock. And because of the music, you're one of the only people who can hear it. But you hear a voice kind of going under that says, "Oh, hello! Can somebody help me out of here? I would please like to get out of my casket, quickly and quietly, if possible. I'm in a bit of a situation here."
Your appearance would cause quite a bit of concern, I think, given the circumstances. What is your situation?
I turn around and plus this is a standing room only crowd and I'm killing.
Is the casket locked? Can I kind of sidle over and see if it's sealed?
It is not sealed. It is only closed. Now, my question to you is, are you going to try and do this quietly without anyone noticing, or in the full view of the congregation, are you going to open this up and start talking to the person inside?
Oh, so I was going to kind of pretend. So I was going to kneel down next to it like I was like doing some pre-funeral praying. So I'm going to try to like disguise this as cleric-y things. And I'll like maybe I'll give Sione some like incense to like wave around while I do this to try to distract.
Incredible. I would like a I would like a performance or deception check from both of you. And because of this plan, I will give you advantage.
Advantage doesn't help when you don't have any pluses to charisma.
I'm on like the 50th round of the chorus, and this will be the day that he died. Oh, this will be the day that...
I rolled a 19.
Sorry, what was that number?
I rolled a 19. Sione, not so much.
Sione rolled a 5 and a 3.
All right. So Haley, Fia is able to speak with him quietly, and in these rituals, you can fit anything in there, and you're able to communicate with whoever's in there. Embers, Sione tries to lift this up quietly, but once you get a little bit of a peek in, staring at you is what is clearly a dead body, but looking happily at you and giving you a little wave. And that is enough that you kind of jump a little bit and it kind of pops up. The man who was kind of walking around as if he was looking for someone or just kind of perusing the area, who is under the scrutiny of the guard, kind of saunters up to the front and leans over as if he is putting down a flower and kind of stops for a minute and then says in a hushed voice, "Well, what do you think you're looking at here now? And where's the girl who's supposed to be inheriting this place?"
Is he saying that to me?
Yeah, he's saying it to both you and Haley. You guys are basically right beside each other.
So at this time, I'm going to use my cantrip of shape water and take the holy water from one of the fountains, lift it up in the air, and make it form the shape of whatever finery or town guard-esque kind of symbolism or iconography that I see on this person who's approached us. And basically try to create a great distraction, and if I can, I'd like to have that water that's changed shape and animate come and hover over this town guard fellow. Okay,
yeah, so this person isn't a town guard, but you can definitely create... He seems to be one of the rougher individuals who's been kind of coming in, but the guard are watching him pretty closely, so you are definitely able to lift something up and the water kind of comes up and he's like, "What's this?" And
then when I see it start to happen, I look at him with this look of as much fear as a lizard face can kind of demonstrate to the audience, and I just hiss, "What magic is this?"
He looks at you, and you know what? Make a deception roll for me, please.
A bullshit check.
Yeah, yep, do it. And I'm gonna roll. Oh, okay. All right. He didn't roll very well, but let's see. Oh, okay.
19.
Yeah, 19. Awesome. So you distract him enough and he kind of bats the water in the air and the symbol itself kind of breaks and falls onto the flowers. And he just kind of looks at you both and he, and under his breath one more time, looking around, seeing that everyone's watching him, says, "I don't know what kind of trickery is happening here, but this man owes me debts. And whoever's taking this on is going to pay him. So you come and see me. You come and see me after this." And he hands you a letter, which basically tells you exactly where he is going to be found. And then heads back down and resumes his spot in the congregation as if nothing happened.
I'll point to him and be like, "The wizard, everyone! Entertainment for this dark day!"
You get a bizarre clap from the people. Some are enthused, some are kind of concerned. The guard who take up the first two rows on one side are not interested in the slightest.
I'm a druid, not a bard.
Is there, Haley and Embers or Sione, is there anything that you guys want to try and convince this creature in the casket?
Like, could you stay dead for 2 more hours?
Are there a lot of people in here? I was kind of hoping that I could just get out.
Unfortunately, not right now, and I'm just gonna, like, push the casket closed onto his head. And as soon as, like, if I'm able to get it closed, I will begin the ceremony.
There's a bit of resistance, but you push down, and you hear a grumbling under it. He's like, well, be sure to talk to me afterwards. I have things that Oh, well, make it quick then. And then he just kind of goes quiet, and air, aside from, you can hear some slight humming from the casket as you sing, but nothing that would get any distraction from people there. Air, is there anything else you want to do before we fast forward the scene?
I'm good. I mean, I assume I'm walking through the crowd with an open hat collecting tips at this point.
Oh, yeah. At this point, why don't you roll a persuasion check on the tips? But I will give you advantage because it was quite the song. Ooh. And you killed it on the roll.
Well, if you fail that, you could always make a sleight of hand check and pickpocket them.
Yeah, just robbing the ones that aren't giving me the money. All right. Well, I don't think I need that. I got a 24 total.
Okay, yeah. So this is there are definitely rich people in this area, and you can see really quickly there's at least over 50 gold in this hat that you've been able to put in. And even though some people seem upset about the whole situation, they are paying you because either out of duty or just because they really enjoyed what you were doing. Now, let's say for quickness sake here that everything goes smoothly for the rest, and you are able to then quickly and quietly brush everyone aside, save for one guardsman. And this guards person seems to be the most ornate of the lot, and he has left the rest of his people waiting outside. And he is standing at the door, kind of blocking the way of anyone else's exit, waiting for you to come and talk to him.
I'm going to. I tend to be the face. But Fia, can you come with me? I just, I need someone, who's holy for these sorts of proceedings. Hello, friend.
So this is after the ceremony is over?
Yes, the ceremony has ended. For our sake of this quick one.
Great.
And now what seems like a high member of the guard is waiting for you at what seems like one of the only exits of the place.
What can we do you for?
Now, to the best of my understanding, there was to be a half-elf girl who was to be here, and none of you are her. What is your relationship to this young woman who is to take on this very illustrious new set of, this illustrious new enterprise?
We are just hired hand. We were hired to do the funeral rites. We were hired, obviously I was entertainment. Also, the lizard's here. And, we, that was it. We're just in it for the money, and I shake my hat, so... We've got that, so we'll be on our way.
And he puts his...
It's an unpaid internship.
For you, yes.
It's my duty to make sure that all souls are put to rest properly.
Once he hears the combination of these things, he kind of puts his hand up just to stop you from leaving for one more minute. And he says, if you're just in it for the money, and he looks at Fia, and if you are people of goodwill and wish to make this place better, our concern was when you were part of this old guard of this organization. But if you are just here to help out whoever has hired you, we need good mercenaries. We need people who can get into places that known officials cannot. Especially we need people that are new. And without giving too much away here, and you can see that he's hiding some things right now. He says, I am interested in your patronage to the crown.
Inside check!
Please.
I was going to say that I would like to cast... One? I would like to cast Zone of Truth.
Indeed.
Ooh, even better. I don't inside check. I wait for Fear to do that.
All right. So you cast the zone. What does that look like, Haley?
I cast a zone of truth, and he must make a wisdom. I'm checking.
Okay.
Saving throw.
All right. So what's the DC on that?
Sorry, it's a charisma saving throw.
Okay.
17 is my charisma DC.
17?
I don't know if you intended this. I don't know if you intended this to be 9th level Fia.
No, this is good. This is perfect. I did not intend
actually,
it, but let's play it that way.
That's pretty close to what my starting wisdom was anyway.
Totally.
DC was anyway.
So he fails it. And you see him try and say something. But he's not able to. And you see him try again, and he is not able to. And then he looks around and he kind of realizes what's happened. And he says, I can't tell a lie in this space anymore, can I?
No.
I don't know. Let's see. Sione, you're wildly attractive and I want to take you to my bed. No, you can't.
Okay. And so he says, there's a job that I need doing that I wasn't going to tell you here, but since we're in this spot, I might as well. If you're hoping to do some good, or at least to be paid for it, go to the inn in the part of the town that we know as the Dregs and look for a dwarf who works there. He has information that we need about a multitude of people who have gone missing over the past weeks. Any information that you have, we will pay for, and any leads or any findings that you bring to us will be paid in full.
We're not worth that kind of money. Shit. Fia, stop this.
What does that have to do with this funeral?
I'm new to my post. This is a corrupt place, and we are trying to root it all out, and this organization might have had a part in it. So I was originally here to see the woman who was taking it on, but I found you instead, and you might be an answer to a problem that I have yet to solve. If not, then you may die, and I'm sorry for it, but good people are missing. Families, children, friends.
Well, we will consider this.
Any information you have, you can find me at the courthouse, and speed is preferable in this. And with that, he kind of nods, and he walks away. As soon as you hear the steps of him kind of walking out, the Sione, are you still by the casket?
I was part of the conversation just now a minute ago, so I'll have to say that I was within speaking distance of
Totally.
Fia and Bert.
Okay, so from behind all of you, you hear like the crack of the casket kind of pushing open, and you see the deceased body of an old half-elf man kind of climbing himself out and kind of stretching himself up in the air. The priest, who was just kind of lazily sitting in the back, screams and then just kind of runs into the back and hides. The old man kind of shakes himself off and says, "Oh, who'd have thought dying would hurt so much? Oh, what you do to get away from the law? Hello, excuse me. I would like to leave now, if you don't mind. Unless you can be of assistance to me any further."
How does he look? Like, does he look like a corpse?
He looks like a corpse. He looks like a very well-dressed corpse. Make a perception or investigation check, whichever you prefer.
It's the look all corpses want this season.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's what's hot and being cold and clammy. Can I make one too?
Please. Yep.
I rolled a 5 plus 9, 14.
14?
So 14.
I rolled a 13.
I've got a 19.
Okay, yeah. So anyone who rolled under a 15, you can tell that he is entirely deceased. You can tell that his body had been intentionally preserved and that he's probably been dead for a little while. You might be able to guess that it's probably because he had to wait for the funeral to come in because his last will and testament said that this person was traveling from afar away, so they preserved the body. He is a thin half elf, kind of very thin grain hair, kind of to the back. He's ashen and gray, but his outfit is very, very expensive, made of very nice materials. And he is adorned in jewelry, in rings, and in necklaces. Air, you notice that one of those necklaces is actually a little tighter along his neck than anything else, and it's got a glow to it that nothing else seems to. And so he kind of clambers up out of this, and he says, "Well, I don't know if my niece paid you or not, so you're going to have to deal that with her. Unless you want extra work, you can move aside and we will be out of each other's hair. Now, what shall it be?"
Can I just ask one quick question? Did you just say you faked your undeath?
I didn't fake it. And he kind of like shakes himself and you can hear like the rattling of bones and like he kind of pulls up his shirt and you can see that his body is just gross and dead. And he kind of laughs and pats it a bit.
It's ghosts all the way down.
It's ghosts all the way down. Isn't that a son of a lich? All right.
I didn't fake it. This was the only solution that was left to me. Now,
if there's someone I want to get into business with, it's you.
I would like to try and cast Dispel Magic on him.
Okay.
You're going to re-kill him?
I'm going to see what happens.
Totally.
Thea's not like okay with the not keeping with the normal order of nature.
Yeah.
It's a problem. Friend. She's like, "You're nice and all, but this is unnatural."
Yep. And so so tell me what you roll and then I'm going to add the modifiers that I need to on my end, basically.
Wisdom, straight wisdom is a +9, and ever since I got that, I roll like shit on my wisdom rolls. I rolled a 13.
Okay, let me just take a minute here. I rolled a 4 plus 9. Okay, yeah. So he is not happy. He is not happy, but you see him you see the necklace kind of shake and shudder, and he kind of just. And whatever's going on, he seems to be able to kind of like shake it off a little bit, and he says, "Whoa, what are you doing? I paid a lot of money for this. Stop it now." "Why would you do that? I just offered you money. If you don't want it, just get out of my way. If you do want it," and then he kind of like takes out. He kind of takes out this card and he hands it to Air, and his fingers are like gross and sticky and cracking, and he says, "You can find me here, and I'm not quite sure what a bath will do to my body now, but I'm going to try it. So good day." And he kind of moves out and heads down, taking his cloak and kind of wrapping it up over his head, and heads out into the day.
I take his evil card and I cast prestidigitation to get all the gunk off of it, and I'm like, "All right, see you later, Elon Husk." And I pocket the undead businessman's business card.
And that's what we'll call the scene. That's it. Thank you very much for going along.
Leap.
Nice
I like
scene.
how you had multiple avenues of NPCs to give them potential jobs depending on what they did.
Yeah, it's my DM philosophy. Well, I mean, my DM philosophy is really to try and run with what the players are interested in. And so like when we were talking about, well, let's talk about quests and where people can find them, I like giving people a chance to see where they want to go, right? So instead of just going to the inn and starting in one spot, I thought that a funeral would be a really interesting opportunity to create a bunch of different places where the party could move forward to, and then just kind of go from there and see where the story took them. Do you guys want to debrief that a little bit?
I was gonna take this into a piece of advice that I thought of while you were saying that for players, since we want to focus a little bit on new player advice, is that when you are playing or creating a character, I would encourage you to think about what your character wants and what their values are. Think of a couple like close a couple of things that are the most important to them. Like I said, that Fia, for example, would be very like not okay with a disturbance in the natural order of the world. And so that would be like one thing that would drive how she would act in this situation. And so whereas Bert acted very differently to an undead business person. So I think that it's definitely okay or even preferable to like make sure that you are engaging in the things in the story that your character would want, and try to make it clear what your motivations for those are, because that will help your fellow players understand your character's motivation more, and it'll also help your DM figure out like what you want to do as players as well.
The bonds flaws. So one of the things I would definitely suggest for new players is to take advantage, if you are not sure who your character is or how you're going to flesh them out, because designing a backstory and whatnot, like it's really a creative writing effort, and sometimes people are they might have a more gamist mindset, and they've come in and they learned the rules, but now it's like, right, I have to create this person with these drives and all of this. All the random tables from the backgrounds and whatnot, certain campaigns even have tables for this, will give you things they call like personality traits, bonds, flaws, things about your character that kind of hone in on their moral outlook, or things from their experience that have kind of honed how they react to situations. And so those are a really great thing to get onto your character sheet early on, so that you always have, as Haley was kind of saying, touch point things about your character. Like Fia being a nature cleric is not cool with something outside the bounds of the natural order of life and death, right?
Totally. What I really liked about what Fia did as well is that like you guys took a moment at the table and she vocalized that, right? She said that, you know what, I'm not all right with this, and this is why I'm doing it. So I think I don't know if it necessarily has to be like a game zero where you just talk about your characters before playing, but spending some time and just expressing what your character wants to everybody. So it's not like I'm a verbal kind of person, right? So it's a difference of me. Like I can have it on my page, but if I'm talking about it, it'll be more in the front of my mind for when you get into those weird kind of moments of being like, well, okay, like Bert, he's like, well, I'm the performer, so I'm going to be the one talking at this funeral, right? Or like I'm Haley being the cleric and the nature cleric, like just knowing where your role is and knowing how you're going to feel about these situations that you didn't see coming.
That being okay with saying like, here's why she's reacting, here's why I'm reacting this way, even though that's like not something that maybe your character would say out loud, especially for beginner players, and I still consider myself fairly beginner at some of this stuff, is like I'm not a great actor, so sometimes I don't know if what I'm trying to convey about my character is actually coming across. And so sometimes I think it's worth just like reinforcing it with like a quick sidebar comment like that, because someone else might just say like, wow, Fia seems to really have decided not to like this person, but it's not the person, it was the situation. And so I think sometimes, especially if there's a gray area for interpretation, it's worth it, especially maybe as a newer player who, or a person like myself who's not as comfortable with the like in-depth role-playing acting side of things, to be okay with just like giving a brief description. I tend to RP a little bit more like I'm writing a short paragraph in a book, then I'm acting something out. So I will say, like, my character said this, and she was also thinking about this and doing this at the same time.
I want to say, Leap, that I also like one of the things we haven't focused on as yet in these segments is actually getting the roles in there. Because we were thinking, let's do the RP first. But the reason we want to make sure we get the roles in there, especially if we're talking to beginner players, is a lot of players have questions about how do the roles work in an RP instance. Like the combat spells it out, and there's an entire systemic breakdown of what you roll when. But when you get into an RP system, it's DM's choice as to like what needs to be a role and what doesn't. So we have some questions here from user It's Maybelline. So I guess they've answered that question. In regards to the user said the vast majority of my questions are related to roles. So they have questions about what if multiple players want to make a history or religion, arcana, etc. check. What if multiple players want to make a medicine check to stabilize a player that's currently unconscious? If you have like a sneaky monster or NPC skulking about, do you just check their passive perception? Do you call for a stealth or for a perception check from all of the players? Do you expect them to know to make perception checks all the time? If multiple players want to loot a corpse, how do you divide up the gold, etc., etc. So it's all about roles, and I think the reason there's so much confusion around this is because it really is up to the DM. It's within their purview to decide what is going to be something difficult to require a measure of skill from a given PC or PCs versus what is something that they will just say, no, that's easy to do, and I'm going to continue with narration. So I thought you had some really good examples in there because, we all want to jump in on this check or that check. So you let us and you'd say, okay, yeah, you can both do it, or you can do it with advantage. Like for a medicine check where multiple players want to do it, I would say, sure, any one of you can make the check at advantage because you're getting help from the other players, which is one of the actions you can take.
Totally.
Yeah.
From the player point of view, there's a tendency, and the thing that I'm working on in my own playing is that when it does come time to, say, make a perception roll, not just saying, I rolled a 4 or I rolled a 12, what do I see? Like, I rolled low. I rolled a, 3, 2 on my perception check, and I was like, well, I was too busy preparing the casket for the ceremony. I wasn't looking around. Like, giving a little bit of flavor makes it more interesting instead of just saying, like, I rolled a number. I didn't do it. Like, give it a little bit of flavor,
totally agree.
And then suddenly it's ooh, I was so good at role-playing that one time. So when it gets into the rolling, like, it tends to just become very crunchy numbers sometimes. And I think especially for new players, because, you have to look at your character sheet and figure out what your modifiers are and how do they work, and are you using the right skill? Is it, which one is investigation? Is that intelligence? Is it wisdom? Who knows? I have to check all the time, and sometimes you can lose.
Totally.
I fall out of the role playing kind of mindset in those moments sometimes. So I do think that it's good to try to tie it back in
for sure.
Playing.
For me, it's all about telling the story, right? And so I really liked that you forwarded the story of being like, no, I wasn't paying attention. I was just too busy. As a player, for me, I always like to see, I always like to ask if it's possible to do something, right? Like for me, I always want to have that idea of being like, okay, can I do this? Or is it possible? Can I make an insight check on this person? I think that they're lying, or, those kinds of things. And new players might not always have that muscle kind of built in, but it's a good muscle to kind of practice, right? Like thinking about what your character wants to do in the story and then asking, okay, I want to try this out, right? Like I want to try and talk to this corpse quietly without anybody noticing. And then as the DM, that's the DM's job to say like, yeah, you can do that. No problem. Bert is playing really loudly or being like, you know what? You're trying to open a casket right now. People are going to be able to see that. You're going to have to roll some kind of check to see how that plays. right? And but I really like adding a certain amount of skill checks into. I find social, like I like giving XP for social encounters. I think it's just as important a
Mm.
part of the game, so I treat it accordingly, right? Like I like having roles and I like having rewards for it, and just those sorts of things, you know?
I really one of the things I want to say from the player perspective, if I may, is one of the things they teach you if you ever do like improv classes or whatnot is to make room for the other players. Like we talk a lot about yes anding, which is following the lead, but it's also to leave space. And I have trouble with this because D&D is definitely my release valve for being an introvert. So I play a character who is very mouthy and loves to talk and considers himself the face of the party, whether he is or not. So he's always trying to get in there and never shut up. So when I was trying to make an insight check, because that's one of the skills he's really good at, and we were getting the sense from Leap as the DM that this guard captain we were talking to was a little bit shady, and Haley said, "Well, I want to cast Zone of Truth." That's a good instance to be like, you know what? That's cooler. I got
Totally.
a good roll, but seed that to the other player because they've just tried to do something cool and they're trying to get into that RP. Making space for the other players at the table is really important, and it can be really easy to bulldoze and to run a conversation because you get really into it and you're really passionate about it. But I thought that was the way cooler option, and I thought it led to like a richer bit of story. So yeah, I really wanted to see where Haley was running with that. Be a
Totally.
fan of the other player.
Yeah, I would say that my recommendation, I tend to be a quieter person, and sort of take a back seat, see if anyone else has anything to say, and then say my bit. And I'm trying to push myself a little more to like speak up or even sometimes speak over if I think I have an idea that might work. Like in that instance, I was like, nope, just say your thing before we move past it. So I've been working on that. So my challenge for people like myself would be to push yourself a little more and speak up every once in a while. And if you tend to be the sort of person who like jumps in first, maybe every few times it comes to like the moment when the DM stops saying something, like tell yourself to like count to five and see if someone else says something in that moment of silence, because you might play with someone like me who never will say something first. um,
Yeah, we call that
and
the air shut up rule. It's a table rule. Like I've said, you can't DM without home brewing. So that's one of our that's one of our rules at our table.
Amazing.
you've got a lot of different people, and I think it's important that everyone challenges themselves a little. 'Cause that's the beauty of D&D, is that it pushes us out of our comfort zone. And I'm not so good at speaking up still, even though I'm giving this advice. So I will need to become a bit more aggressive in my speaking too. Um,
Ooh.
For any new
yeah.
DMs out there, because I consider myself a new DM, which is a just different version of player. That's a really useful thing to know as well. To try and, once you see how people play, to call on people at that time, which I wasn't really doing in that circumstance. But if you know that someone at your table is wanting to participate, but is just getting kind of taken over by some of the louder people, giving them specific checks or giving them the opportunity to make the insight check, make the medicine check, or like be the lead person that someone's conversing with as well, right? Like there's options on both ends of the table there too.
Right, even if it's something not as direct as like having an NPC just specifically go to that one person and talk to them. So then you're not, this is my shy person's preferred way of doing this advice, is instead of saying, Haley, what do you think? Being like, and then the guard walks up to Fia and says, what a nice ceremony, blah, 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 blah. Because then you do it in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're being called on in math class.
Totally. Yeah,
And
that's
it's
really
also
insightful.
just furthering like the story a little bit more, because I think that sometimes I have a tendency, probably from being called on in math class,
It's RP time, nerd.
it's RP. It's time to do your multiplication tables. You don't have them memorized. Oh, be terrified. So I have a tendency when people call on me for answers, like my mind just goes completely blank and I'm like, I know how to do things and speak. Maybe. And so I'm like, I have spells that I do sometimes, maybe in this game. So sometimes like indirect ways of making sure other players are getting their turn. I know we've talked in the past about like initiative out of combat, and things like that. And I don't know if it needs to be as formal as that, but even as a DM, like keeping in the back of your mind, like I've been watching a lot of the World Cup lately, and I promise I'll get back to D&D. I've been watching a lot of the World Cup lately, and one of the stats that they always are showing, like throughout the game, periodically, is like possession percentage, and just keeping like in the back of your mind, like, has this person talked for 50% of the game in your table of 6 people? Have I talked for 50% of the game in my table of 6 people? Like, keeping sort of a mental check in your head, even if it's not just initiative based, and knowing that it's not always going to be even, but keeping kind of a little bit of a tracker. And maybe if someone's always saying, oh, here's an idea, and then the rest of the table's saying, great, let's do that. Maybe saying, like, anyone else have any ideas? That's a great idea. Like, let's see what the rest of the party wants to do, or something like that.
I want to say that that advice, I want to say, doubly goes to DMs, because I know I am super guilty of when I DM a game, I want to create a rich, vibrant world with lots of descriptions of all the, architecture or the pastoral scene as you're, marching through whatever. And it can be very easy to talk your players' ears off because you are in that position of not just being, another player at the table, but the world in and of itself. And so there's a fine line to draw between giving them enough detail to immerse them in your world versus talking a story at them. And I'm always trying to be conscious of that, because I know I can get a little flowery in my language, and then I'm wondering if my players are like, we don't care what color the tulips are. We know what color tulips
We know that they are generally these colors.
Yes.
Dude, I literally did that at the very beginning. So I fall
I
prey to
wasn't
that as
calling
well.
you out.
No,
Leaf. I wasn't calling you out.
I know you weren't. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense, right? Like, you want to set a scene and you want to create problems, but you want to give people space to solve those problems. And I apologize if it seemed like I was moving a little fast. I know that that could have run for a long time, depending. And I
We could have
wanted
spent forever in that church. I could have preached a whole ceremony. I couldn't do that, actually. I would have no idea what to do. I'd be like, and this person was dead, and they lived a life and did things. The end.
I wish we role played that. That would have been.
That would literally have been all I would have said. And now his
Best
body will go
eulogy
back to
ever.
being the soil that fertilizes your plants. That's
Bert starts singing, "It's a circle of life." It moves
Inspiration,
us all.
both of you. I wish I could
I
give it.
think-
Jay won't count it, though. I know he won't.
We have a question from one of our longtime followers, Raph, at Heavenspawn.
Good
And
old Raph.
good old
Yeah.
Raph has a good question for our common newbie question that comes up. Is, do I need to buy anything to play D&D? And I think this would be a great time to just talk even more generally about, like, hey, maybe I've been watching these streams, maybe I have some friends who play, but I've never played. Like, how do I get started? How do I find my table? That sort of stuff. So first question, I'm going to go out into the world of D&D, and I need to know, what do I need to buy to get started? Do I need to buy anything?
If I could start with what I think might be a straightforward bifurcation, my question would be, are you hoping to play face-to-face with a group of players locally, or are you hoping to play online?
Yeah.
Because if you're hoping to play online, I think the stuff you need to buy is a lot less, because there's so many free online dice rollers, online tools, even like the official online tool, which I have absolutely fallen in love with, D&D Beyond, there's already a lot of free content on there. So if you want to create a character, you can throw one together with the free content very quickly. If you want to get into the other options, you can buy them for a few bucks, or you can buy the whole player's handbook and make any old character you want.
Yeah.
So definitely I would check out D&D Beyond, and then normally if you're playing online, there's a lot of free online sites like Roll20, or if you're playing just over voice and Discord, there's dice rolling bots you can add for free to a channel. So I think there's not too much to buy there, maybe save for IP, if you want to make a specific character. Physically, if you're going to play an in-person game, I would say a single set of dice
Yeah, buy
and
Yeah.
maybe a PHP.
a single set of dice. I would say, I mean, I love my physical player's handbook. Like, I packed it. We played our game last Sunday, and I'd packed it to move it. And I was like, I have D&D Beyond here. It's a great resource. I love the new character sheets, by the way. Totally obsessed.
Amazing.
And even with that, though, I was like, I just want to be able to flip through the pages. I just like to hold the book in my hands, even playing over online with my computer in front of me. So I think it also just sort of depends on your personality, too. Like, I just do a little bit better. I have my little tabs. I have little cat faces that I have bookmarked all my spells, and I bookmarked the cleric page, and I bookmarked the elf page, and I have like my character sheet just in the front there. So it just makes it a little easier for me personally, because I tend to get a little distracted too if I leave the game page online. Once I've left it in the tab, I'll go to D&D Beyond, and then I'm like, let's see if anyone said anything in Discord, and the Twitter exists. So the less I can do actually touching my computer, just the better my attention span is. So for me, I find that having physical copies of things is beneficial. I also just like to be able to, I don't read as well on a computer screen as I do in a book, and I love all that lore. So
Totally.
having the books for me to just read and drink all that in just goes a little easier. I know all of it's in Beyond. They do some awesome formatting. They still have the pictures and art, so you still get that flavor. But if you're like me and just have trouble maybe focusing on text on a screen, I would say maybe the books are better for you. How do you guys feel about minis?
I'm from two very distinct worlds. Like, when I played in my hometown with the same group of guys over a long time, we had a D&D fund, and that fund went to buy minis.
Awesome.
Right? Like, every time we got together, we put a little bit of money down, and over time we collected stuff. So if you and your friends are planning to have an at-home game where you know that you are going to be able to play for a really long time, creating resources that you'll be able to use, sharing them is a really useful way. Like, I was going to recommend, if you have a set group of players and you're playing all together, getting the 3 core books that you guys can share, and getting like minis, that's really easy. But if it's new and you're not sure, like, I like minis, I like moving them around, but I also, it's a cost, right? So you might start with theater of the mind, and you might start with some pretty simple drawings and diagrams, like written on paper or whiteboard, and then you could commit.
You can move colored tokens around for a little while, like your general game pieces from any board game, until you kind of know what you want your cost to play to be.
Totally.
Because you can play D&D for 0 money, and you can pay D&D for basically as much money as you would like to spend on it. And all parts of that spectrum are equally great. And I think that's the cool thing about the game too, is that like I can spend $0 and Leap, you could spend $1,000, and we could still play the game together and still both have a great time. And it's fine, but I don't think you need to feel pressured to buy anything off the bat. And there are so many great ways to content share. Like, again, D&D Beyond has a great ability for DMs to share content with their players, or really anyone to share content with their group. If you have I think it's their, like, what's their subscription?
The Legendary
I think if you
subscription
have
or something, I think.
if you
have
have
a
the like
master
DM master
subscription.
subscription, you can
Yeah.
share your content with everyone in the campaign. So we kind of like have pooled some in the past to like buy books that our whole group shares. and things like that.
Yeah, and like when I run games at work, when I'm a teacher and I run games for students, I until very recently we didn't have anything to spend money on. And so everything we did was free. Everything we did was online and we spent a year playing that way. So I can tell you without a doubt, you can play really fun D&D for free. And the one thing with that is that you are going to be creating a certain amount of your own content. If people want to run a story that's been created by Wizards of the Coast, that's just something you're going to buy, and they are entirely worth it if that's the story that you want to run.
Yeah, my first campaign was just when 5e came out, and it was before I think the starter set was out, but Tyranny of Dragons wasn't. So I did everything from scratch, and and it's great. Like the Wizards made sure to put out the basic rules for 5e, so all the rules you need to run the game are free as a PDF. They're free on Beyond under the compendium section. Any place that's using the standard resource document content. The basic rules fall under that, so you can get them any number of places. All the rules you need to run the game are there. All the basics for creating basic characters. Wizards of the Coast has on their site a whole bunch of demo characters in printable PDF character sheets, or you can make one in D&D Beyond. But you really, to get started, all you need, I would really argue, is a printout of those things or on your computer ready to go, and a set of dice and your imagination and some people you want to play with, and you're ready to go.
So, do either of you have any recommendations for finding those people that you need to play with? Where do you find the best people?
Like I said, I'm a teacher and I just saw that kids wanted to play at work. So I offered to play one at work. So there is something to be said about if you have a feeling that there might be someone in your community, whether at work or within your friend group or within your family, who might be interested in a game. It might just be as simple as like throwing out the offer of being like, look, I just really wanted to play D&D sometime. Is anyone interested in trying it out with me? I've never played a game at a local game store, but that's on my to-do list in a big way, because it's just like, that's another cool community that you can tie into. And finally, like online on Twitter is in the streaming communities. That's literally all the D&D that I've been playing for the past couple months has been because of the incredible people that I've met there. So that's what I would say.
Our D&D on Reddit, we've definitely our LFG, our Looking for Group, has definitely been recommended before. If you are playing on an online system like Roll20, they definitely have a group finding feature on there. DMs on there will publish their games and have players kind of sign up or put in a application to be part of the group. I would definitely say, like Leap said, get into one of the D&D communities that is building up around what seems to be a huge wave. What I think is pushing the wave of the modern popularity of D&D is streams like Critical Role, the C Team, as we've mentioned, Dice Camera Action. There's so many of these online shows on Twitch and on YouTube and so forth that have these huge communities and followings building up around them. That's where we have met each other, was through the C Team fandom, and I think it's great. Like, I played with a group of friends who were, some were interested, some were a little bit less interested my first time out, but finding people who are super passionate about the game. And the nice part about these shows is they have a style of play that you can kind of hone into. If you find a show that you really like and you like that style of play and that style of DMing and whatnot, ideally the other folks that will be in that community will also enjoy that style of play. So you can kind of go from there.
I think that would be my advice, is that if you're part of or even tangentially like around these communities, you like these shows, like jump on their Reddit pages, jump on their Discords, lurk in their Twitter chats and tweet at people and ask them if they want to play. yeah, don't be shy, because I think all of us who really love D&D really love to play D&D. Probably are, at least for me, like my main limiting factor is time. I would play a ton more games if I could, but right now, like, one weekly game is about all my schedule can take, sadly. But I think there's always people out there who are even looking to run a one-shot or find new people to just try playing with. So don't be shy and just go for it. Jump in. And on this note, we had a bunch of our awesome checkers comment recently on our page and give some advice for new players joining in. That was partly from our giveaway and partly from before we recorded this episode. We asked what questions people might have about how to get into a game. So we will definitely retweet that thread so you can check some of those out, because you all had some great advice. Thanks for sharing it with us. And as always, if you have any other questions that come up, things that you want us to talk about, inspirational people that you would love if we could have on the show, no promises, but tweet at us at InsightCheckPod, and we will do our best to answer all your cues from our A's. And and
It's funny you should mention the giveaway, because we just finished our first giveaway, and a whole bunch of very cool dice have gone out to a bunch of lucky checkers out there. So congratulations to those folks. I want to say that I am the exact opposite of Haley. I bought a player's handbook and a Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and have basically never cracked them open once, because I always use digital. To that end, in upcoming weeks, we will be having a giveaway to give those away as well. So stay tuned. We will have more details on that.
thank you for joining us for another episode of Insight Check. Thank you, as always, to Vinswept for our theme music and to Amy T. Falcone for our art. If you could take a moment and please rate us on iTunes, subscribe, review, all those things, we would greatly appreciate it. And until next time,
Answering your cues from our collective A's. This
Was
Insight Check!
Dungeon Crawler.
Dungeon Crawler.
Dungeon Crawler! Yeah.
Whoa.
Whoa.